Oates, when I first came to Breck, I never expected that we'd become this close of friends. You're one of the most passionate and hardworking people I know, and I've seen that over and over, especially when you talk about politics. I love you, and you're going to crush the speech, and you're going to do great things in the future. And if you ever need someone to pick you up in the early morning, I'll be awake this time. Introducing my best friend, William Oatman.
I thought for a long time about what I wanted to discuss in my allotted few minutes in front of all of you. Why waste my one and only senior speech after all? So I'm going to talk about my favorite subject, history. Humans are predictable after all, and history is our roadmap to avoid the mistakes our ancestors have already made. I've always loved history. It started early, watching documentaries with my dad as a kid or hearing stories from my grandparents. While my dad may have introduced me to my passion for history, I would say that my obsession has far surpassed him at this point. I know the most random historical events, facts, and figures out of anyone I've ever met without a degree. While for some, history can seem dull, I prefer to look at it as a massive web of causes and effects that our ancestors formed into the world we live in now. Everything we do today builds this web into the future. For example, one side effect of Prohibition led to the United States holding over 560 million pounds of cheese in caves under the continental United States. If any of you guys ever had government cheese, that's where it came from. On a more serious note, we're always living history. Regardless of your political opinion, it is absolutely undeniable. There are mass protests all over the world, and we're more divided than ever. Throughout democracies in history, there are warning signs of late-stage near-failure democracy. In the first recorded instance of a democracy in the city of Athens in ancient Greece, the democratic system lasted for 175 years before an oligarchic coup weakened faith in the government and eventually led to the city's occupation. Or Germany in the 1920s and 30s, where the democratic process was completely dismantled by Hitler using several strategies. He used fear in order to silence and control the press. He utilized his control of the press to create propaganda, propagating the stab-in-the-back myth, blaming the Jewish people for the loss of World War I. Then, finally, to give himself complete power, he used the Reichstag fire in order to give himself emergency powers, which he would retain until his death under a bunker in Berlin. Now, I don't need to point out the obvious correlations between these late-stage, weak democracies in history and our own country. I don't say this to vilify the left or the right, as this is not about political parties. Both sides take tens of millions of dollars from lobbyists and billionaire donors, but just because that's the way it is does not mean that's the way it will always be. Our modern world today exists because many of our ancestors did not choose to stand and watch the plague of fascism spread across Europe. They left their families and their homes to risk their lives for the betterment of the world. And now we see our own country, our government, controlled by the interests of large corporations, billionaires, and foreign powers. We've become polarized to the point that we all hate each other so much, our own government officials are incapable of opening the government. Both sides have decided that their own victory over the other party is more important than the tens of thousands who would go hungry without government benefits or low-level government employees trying to support a family working without pay. Just as responsibility fell on our ancestors to free Europe from the grip of the Nazis, we are now called to rebuild our own democracy. Whether we like it or not, we have been chosen to be the generation that watches our great country crumble into an oligarchy, or the generation that will stand up and refuse to watch our elected officials bend to the will of millionaires, and we will get to bear witness to a new and better America. Change doesn't drive itself. It's our responsibility to bring change against injustice. And throughout history, it's been the young people who get this job done. Have you ever experienced being looked down on or talked down to because of your age? We're told that the world isn't ready for us or that we lack experience. But if you take even a brief look back through history, you'll find that some of humanity's most outstanding achievements were driven not by the old experienced generations, but by the young and inexperienced. Think for a moment about Alexander the Great. His conquest began at just 20 years old, and by the time he was 30, his empire stretched from Greek Macedonia to the Indus River in India. Or Augustus Caesar, the first emperor of Rome. He began his struggle for power at 18, and by 32, he had consolidated the squabbling Roman republics into the Roman Empire, which would stand millennia after his death. Or finally, Joan of Arc, who at just 17 years old convinced the heir to the French throne to grant her an army, and she bravely led them to multiple victories against the British before her eventual capture and execution. These were all young adults, albeit living in a different time without the resources and knowledge that each of you has access to in this room. But what did they all have in common? They didn't wait. They didn't just sit down and accept the notion that they were less capable. They saw a world and decided to mold it into their vision. So that's my charge to all of you. Don't wait. Don't tell yourself that because you're just a kid, your time hasn't come. Each of us gets an average of 29,000 days on Earth. That's 29,000 opportunities for us to wake up and carve our names in the history of a better world. Your time is right now. Our time is right now. Thank you.